Okay, everyone, we're going to start. We have our panel here. So right now we have, I'm going to introduce everybody and start with some questions. Chris Rossmeyer is part of the panel, Ryan Andrews, Cecily Chow, and Mike Johnston. How this works, just like other masterminds, is so these are agents that all have experience flipping houses for their own profit. They've been doing it for quite some time. Most notably, I think everyone on here, Cecily can confirm as well, but they've all been doing it since the market crashed in 05, or I should say 07, and then they've also been doing it now. So I think it's a good perspective on flipping homes from the real estate agent's perspective. We're going to start with the series of these questions that we pitched to these agents. They're going to give their answers from the questions as far as how they run their flipping business. And then it's going to be opened up to everybody to ask questions. This is being recorded so other people can see it as well. I also flip, so I can chime in as well. I invited my wife into this as well, so she could chime in because she does it with me. I'm not sure if she's able to with her schedule jump on. So we'll get started. First, why don't we go around and introduce the panel? And we'll start with Chris Rossmeyer.
Hey everyone, Chris Rossmeyer, agent at the office on the broker management team. I've flipped 24 homes in my lifetime and also built 3 properties from scratch.
Good one. All right, Cecily.
Okay, I did a few flips in the beginning of my real estate career, but right now I did mostly buy and hold, meaning buy, fix up, and rent it out.
Oh, that's awesome. Great. We're going to move over to Ryan Andrews.
Hey, I started back in 05 with Remax, did my first flip around 06, 07. Did my own build from the ground up in 08 in the house I lived in, and then sold, and picked back up probably in about 2014. Got a partner, money backer, and we did about 16 flips together. Couple a year, few a year. As many, if we try to do 2 on average, if we could do a third, we do.
And Mike. Mike, you're on mute. Unmute. Let me ask Mike to unmute.
Okay, sorry about that. Been with Remax since 2005. Personally did probably 3 flips, but most of my business is buy, fix, flips. I do probably for other investors, probably 15 to 20 a year.
Nice. All right. So I think that's a pretty good a pretty good representation of experienced agents on the panel that work flips. I will say I know of this group. I believe Cecily and Chris have done them in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. I think Cecily does more in New Jersey than PA. Mike is specific to PA, really Philadelphia, and Ryan does mostly in Philadelphia. I'm not sure if he's done any in New Jersey as of yet. So it's a nice mixture as well. All right. And whoever's, Chris, if you can mute, because you have people in the background, Chris Rossmeyer. So guys, try to be cognizant of how to mute and unmute when you're going to answer. So the first question that we have is, what formula do you use to determine your expected return on investment on a project that you're doing? And on the panel, we'll start with, let's start with Ryan.
So we have a formula that was given to me, so it's kind of a rule of thumb, but we don't stay by it strict. That formula was find the ARV, take 70% of it. So for example, my last flip that we did in Port Richmond almost actually came right to this formula. We ended up selling it for $310. Take 70% of that, the 300. That would put you at 210, and then you subtract your construction cost. My contractor went in and gave me a front to back $80,000 renovation. So minus the 80 from the 210 would put you at 130 to get in for the property, and we paid 135 for it. So we kind of hit where we wanted to on our margin. Little extra carrying costs. We thought it'd be a 4 to 6 month project, took about 8. So, but still came pretty close to what our formula was.
Right, I use the same one.
Tesla uses the same one. So basically that's a 70%. Just to summarize that real quick, Ryan.
70% of the 70%
outsale.
of the outsale of the ARV.
Yep.
So if you predict an outsale of 300,000, take 70% of that. It'll take you down to 210, and then subtract your contractor cost to do it front to back. And,
Got it.
And that's where you kind of want to be in to try to get the property. And you could adjust the numbers a few thousand here and there just to try to make sense of it, especially in this market.
All right, Mike or Chris, do you guys have a different formula that you use for return on investment?
I have the same formula. Mike, do you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I have the same formula, except for I'll go to 75%. 70% is really tough, especially in a competing market right now. If you're trying to find a flip, if you're only going to do 70%, you're probably not going to find any properties. I'm seeing people at sheriff sales go down to like 15% on, especially like on buy and holds. So to do 70-30s become really difficult. But yeah, 70-30 is really the way to go. If you can do 75, then go to 75. I personally will not go below 75 because there's too many variables where you could wind up, either making no money or even losing money.
Mike?
I don't have an exact science. I try to find you got to know your area. The comps in the area are the most important thing. If you're not going to make at least $30,000 to $50,000 on it, you got to pass on it, because there's so many costs out there that you're not sure of after you start tearing a house apart, meaning electric, plumbing, HVAC, running ducts. So if I try to find stuff that's going to be about $300,000. Typical rehab in Fishtown is like 80 grand, give or take, and that's doing everything. So you should be in at 125 to 150, including your closing costs on the front, closing costs on the back.
So those are.
I don't know if that. I mean, I don't really have an exact science to those.
No, that makes sense. So you're kind of taking each one as it is when you're seeing it and analyzing it.
Yeah, and one rehab could be 30,000, one could be 80,000. So it depends.
So what I like to do is I go off of an ROI on the cash I want to put into it. That's my actual liquid cash going in. Because there's different ways to get money. If you have a partner, if you have a hard money loan, whether you're getting construction loan. So what I do is I like to target, and it kind of falls under, I think, Ryan, Cecily, and Chris's formula. I tell investors, or I go to myself, and being an agent, obviously we have less cost, but I look at 15 to 25% return on my cash investment for a 6-month period. That's how I look at it. I look if I acquire the property, then I want to try to get it rehabbed and up on the market and hopefully sold in 6 months, maybe 9 months. And I calculate my carrying costs, cash out carrying costs, and all the expenses in my entire plan for the entire 9-month period. So if I get it done in 6 months, I have a little bit of a cushion. And if I'm using all of my cash into it, meaning if I pay 100 for the 100K for the property acquisition, and I put another 80 into it, then I got 180 into it, then I figure out the out sale and I figure out the costs of the holding costs, then I want my profit to be 15% or 20% of that cash in. So hopefully that helps people. And I do that if I decide to leverage, then obviously my goal is to get 15 or 20% of all the cash I'm using. And if I'm doing hard money and I have to pay any mortgage payments for the month, that goes into my holding costs. So I think all in all these formulas kind of come out to roughly the same. I mean, but when I meet with an investor, and this is a little different, the investor will always say, oh, I want a good deal. But I always ask them, like, what do you want as a return on the money in? Because that's really what people look at. I could put my money here. I could put my money here. What's my ROI on that money that I'm putting out? Because that matters more than anything, I think. So those are great answers. This is a great start. Now we're going to move on to a couple, some other questions. Do you GC the project yourself, or do you hire a contractor? And for the panelists, get an idea of where to raise your hand, and I'll go for the person that raises their hand first. Ryan.
So for our first probably 8 to 10, we GC'd them ourselves. Noticed that we were putting a lot of time into it. That was hiring every sub ourselves, making sure all material was there, because most of the subs giving you their price was just to come in and do the work. So that's picking up tile at Home Depot at 8 o'clock at night, loading it up, getting it down there. So yes, did we get out of it on a better bottom line? But at the end of the day, we started interviewing contractors and getting their costs front to back. 20,000 higher on average for the project, but was that 20,000 worth, 10 each to me and my partner for all that time we were putting into it for the 5-6 months? And we felt, yes, it was. So the last, I'd say 5, we hired a contractor front to back. We just pop in maybe once a week, take a look at progress, but don't have to do nothing.
I'm going to expand some questions on Ryan before somebody else answers, because I know this is probably a lot of things going through people's minds. Ryan, do you have a cost that you calculate without getting other people's opinions on GC costs? Do you have a cost to be the GC that you associate with the project?
You know what? I never did, because I didn't know how much time and effort it took to GC it yourself, and getting busy. To me, the renovation side of it is side income. My primary business is being a realtor, buy and sell for clients. So, I would have a different approach if it was my sole income. And so at that point, I just felt it was worth sticking with a contractor. So no, I didn't have any, what's my time worth? How much should I pay myself to GC it?
Got it. It's a good question to ask. Any of the other panelists want to take this question on?
Most of the guys that I work with, they have their own crews. So
they're the GC?
Yeah, they're the GC. What's going to cost me $100,000 is going to cost them 65 to 70. So that's the advantage that they have over the guy that's going to do it for the first time.
Got it. Chris or Cecily?
Well, I had a GC for my first big flip, and he charged me 10% of the total cost. And it's beneficial because it's the early stage of my flippings. So I learned a lot from him. So I think it's 10% is well spent.
Is that 10%? So if your flip cost 100,000, it's 10% of that?
10% for his being a GC on top of.
Wow, so I guess the question is, and this is most realtors will say, is was he padding any of the sub costs?
He might be.
That sounds, no, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, because that sounds really low, 10%. I would pay that every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
It was back in 2013 when the market is not like today.
Yeah.
They charge more now.
Now, what do you do now, Cecily?
I don't do flip anymore because the income tax is too high. Mm-hmm. On the book, you see you making 50,000 from one flip, but you pay 20%, assuming, back to the government. So I just, for long term, if you're doing maybe 5 or 6 flips a year, it makes sense. But right now, I fix up and then rent it out. I don't do it right away.
And I guess in the tax portion, you can depreciate that also,
yes,
which helps your taxes. And Chris Rossmeyer?
When I started with a friend, and my friend did all the work. It was a really good situation when I first started, because I didn't have really much money. Not like I have a lot of money now, but I had even less then. And I would buy the properties and he would do all the labor for free and get paid on the back end. So that really worked out well for a while. And I did my first 5 properties that way. And the downside to that was it was just my one friend. And I started doing a lot of bigger flips that needed complete rehabs. And they were just completely out of his scope of ability, because, he wasn't working just for me. He was doing his own contracting jobs And it would normally take like 9 to 10 months for him to finish the project. And it was just taking a real long time to get everything done. So I went away from that model. I had enough money to hire other people to do it. I GC'd my own next like 3 or 4 after that. And like Ryan Andrews said, it was a nightmare because you wind up spending a minimum of like 20 hours a week doing all that stuff, picking up, like, just like he said, going to Home Depot 4 or 5 times a week, dropping stuff off, ordering supplies to be delivered to the property, you know, ordering 200 sheets of sheetrock to be delivered. It just wasn't worth it. So I hired a GC after that. Since then, I've hired and fired 4 different GCs. So I've had problems with GCs. They start out great, and then after the first 1 or 2 deals, they almost always start to fail at some point. So I'm constantly trying to reinvent the wheel as far as hiring good GCs. If anybody knows a great one, I'm all ears. I'm on my 4th one now, and probably will be on my 5th one after this next project.
Anybody on the panel want to comment to that? There's tons of comments I'm sure people could have.
The one thing I want to say about when we hired a GC and weighed his cost against how much it was costing us to run the job, we go with a guy who actually is hands-on. So when I say GC, he's actually licensed, insured. He's in there doing majority of the work. He has to bring his own subs that he's not licensed for. He'll bring in a roofer, things like that. But I did make a mistake one time and hired a quote unquote GC who doesn't get his hands dirty. So like Cecily said, he had a markup. So he was charging me to get the job done and then put his percent, which I don't know what it was, but it kind of took us over our budget. So we didn't go with him. So I guess be careful in who you're considering hire and make sure he's a guy who is going to be the one responsible, be the one there every day, front to back, doing the work.
Cecily, did you want to add anything?
No, just like Chris said, you might find a good GC or contractor for 1 or 2 projects, but after the second one, they always went wrong. Like it just happened all the time. So you just constantly need to look for new guys.
Yeah. So what we did is we started our own construction company, and we got licensed, insured, bonded, and we acted as the GC, as Ryan's saying, so we could pull permits, do all the things you need to do. And there was only a couple contractors that we would sub out that we had to get them to pull permits on, because with a general, GC license, and even in New Jersey, you can pull a lot of your permits with everything that we had. The initial cost was something around the line. I think it was somewhere in the ballpark of $3,000 to $4,000. We still have the construction company going, and then we hired staff to manage all of the ordering. So we came in with our design concepts, our contractors. We knew how much work needed to be done, how many things of sheetrock, and then we had an admin person that just ran all of the orders and checked with everything, and we managed over that. So for those of you, if you're doing like 3, 4, 5, that might be something you want to consider. If you're doing like 3 to 5 a year, is you run it all yourself, charge yourself a fee. I'm big on, and Ryan said when he started, he's working with a partner, and he never figured out how much the fee would be if he self-GC. And I guarantee you GC'd more than Doug did, right?
Yeah.
So Doug's bringing the money, but I think you guys can find that in certain economic times, money's easier to get than the person to do the labor of GCing it. So, you probably have a higher value of doing the GC work, of finding a good GC or doing it yourself, and you have to charge yourself that value. Just like you're running your own real estate business, you have to know what your value is. So that's another way you can do it. Because I agree with them. I never found a good GC I liked. It was brutal getting them to pull permits, and they were late and this and that. So we have one that we're working on right now that he is a GC. We've worked with him before on a Cinnaminson project, and he's good, but he knows that we have our own construction company. So I think that kind of levels him out, and he gives us a rock bottom price and lets us run it through our construction company. And he literally has his whole crew coming. So he's almost like a junior GC on the project. All right. What's that?
I was going to say, one of the things too, I noticed with these GCs, it's almost like negotiating a house deal, like for a client. You have to negotiate prices with these guys too. I found that a lot of times I'll go through a rehab and they'll give me a price of like 110,000, and I'll tell them they're out of their mind, and we wind up eventually settling for 80 or 85,000. It's like the same thing with these guys. So you have to go into
Yeah.
it knowing that they're going to try and make as much money from you as they can. Most of them are charged between $60 and $80 a square foot.
And let's be real, if you can guarantee somebody work over the course of a year, then you should get a better, obviously, you should be able to get a better fee. But if they're coming in and it's a one and done and they're trying to win it, and they always bottom, they go in with a low number, I always think, and maybe the panel can affirm this, I just feel that they're the ones that end up failing me. They come in to win it. It's just like you taking a listing and for 1.5%, and you're salty now 3 months later, it's not selling. You're like, I don't want to work for this person. I'm only getting 1.5%. It's the same mindset, I think. Next question. So if you are acting as the GC, how do you pick your contractors?
Now, I'll say now, strictly off referral. I've had the same guy. I'm actually getting nervous listening to everybody else that, you know, they're good for a couple and then they go off the rails. This last guy, he's finishing up our third, and I hope to continue to use him. But yeah, strictly referral at this point. I've tried just calling, and you never know who you're giving your down payment money to, and how, you know, not show up for 2 or 3 weeks. So strictly referral, and I'm sticking with this guy for now.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I
Cecily,
usually just call
Mike.
Ryan. I usually call Ryan, and Ryan has a guy for me because Ryan knows everybody in Fishtown.
I actually have to say that Ryan, these guys, if I call them, they will ignore me. If I get Ryan to call them, they're at the house putting an HVAC system in. It's like he has an incredible, uncanny ability for people to just like stand by him. Chris, Cecily, how do you guys pick your contractors?
I call Ryan, the roofer.
Don't bring him up.
Billy.
Yeah. Now, Billy, I can't hear Cecily at this point. She's muted.
Oh, I said, what happened to the roofer, Bill Green? He was
I
good
know.
for projects. Now he has all kind of trouble with my clients.
Yeah, you know what? He took on more than he could handle. He got busy like everybody else, and he was bouncing job to job. Don't get me wrong, I'm not giving an excuse for him, but I've used him for probably 10 years. And he's actually screwed me in the last 6 months as well. So yeah, he's off our vendor list.
Right.
Chris?
Let's see. I've worked off of referrals for the most part, but even these guys, like I said, I've used all of them for 2 or 3 jobs, and it seems like they get too busy, and then my projects all start stringing out for 6, 8, 9 months. The new construction builds that I'm working on now, I have one that had problems with permits being pulled, and my contractor built the property taller than the code. So we had to go to court and fight it, and it's been a complete nightmare. So even when you get referrals, like I said, these guys, a lot of times they're good for a few deals, and then I don't know if they just take on more than they can chew, but they wind up just not being good in the end, and you have to find somebody else. So I feel like I'm always reinventing the wheel. I haven't found a good contractor that's been consistent over more than 3 or 4 deals in a row.
Yeah. And one thing that might work if you ever, it's a thought process, is if everybody created like a private group, like if people that are go-to flippers, meaning us in this group, created a group that we consistently gave people business, then it might be easier to keep these subcontractors in better line, because they can project, hey, I got 4 people I'm working with. I get, maybe 10 jobs that whole year from them. So it's consistent money. Problem is a lot of the contractors aren't really business-minded individuals. They chase the shiny coin, like a lot of people.
Well, one of the things I did, John, was I joined a lot of house flipping groups, and I decided to try and get some prices on the GCs that are affiliated with the groups. I mean, who better to go to than people that work with house flippers all the time?
Sure.
And maybe because I was the new guy in, they gave me like ridiculous prices. I couldn't even work with them because their prices were so high. And I had to go use somebody else just because my profit would have gone directly to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's the key. It's like, if you can give people, I guess, consistent business, and you know them and they're in your network, then we have an advantage. And I'm not sure if Cecily found this at some point, but like, we had an advantage because Gia has a lot of Turkish contractors. So their language barrier is actually, the language barrier prevents them from having so much more opportunity. So they kind of bend over backwards for her, give her great pricing. So that helps us a lot. Which, because they can't compete on the open market because they can't communicate as well with the average consumer. All right, we're going to move over to how you fund the project. Do you typically use cash, or do you obtain financing, or do you bring a partner in that has the cash, like Ryan mentioned?
Most of my guys are cash guys. The advantage is, the seller's going to take a cash offer before they're going to work with anyone doing financing. So if you can't do cash, you got to do hard money.
Yeah.
Because conventional financing, there's just too many players out there. Ryan's in a real good spot because he's got a guy that has tons of cash, and he listens to what Ryan has to say as far as purchasing. That helps.
Chris?
So I partnered with an ex-client of mine. I sold a bunch of his rental properties, and he wanted to get out of the rental business, and he told me that he wanted to get into house flipping, but he didn't know how to do it. He also lives in Israel. So I partnered with him. He comes up with the cash. I find the properties and get all the work done. And we also have like sub investors a lot of times for some of our projects. I mean, a couple of our projects were like, 400,000. So we had multiple people in, and what we usually do is we'll offer 12% on the return. So if they give us 100,000, they're going to get 112,000 when the project is done. And that's how we found a lot of investors who want to get involved and fund the deals. It's worked out. And then myself and my partner, we split 50-50 of whatever's left over.
Nice. Cecily, if you're willing to share when you were doing it, or even on the buy hold, what do you do?
I like the buy and hold model because rental is cheaper to buy. So I pay cash. And then I only pay 70% or 65% of the ARV. So by I finish that and put a renter in, and I'm able to refinance and get my money out. So
Got it.
Cash in, cash out, and I buy another one using the same amount of cash.
How many are you allowed to carry?
I do LLC. I don't use my personal name.
Okay. So you have to 20% or 25% down?
They allow me to refi 75%. Yes, so that's 25%. But the 25% is already embedded to the ARV minus the repair cost. So I say if I pay a rental for 100K, cost me 50,000 to fix up. I normally can walk out with the cash with another 150K or even more.
So you're getting all your money back on the refi.
Yes.
Okay. And you just have 25% equity into it, after the work's done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
oh, that's good. So you're getting all your that's
but it makes the house normally in a very bad condition. It requires full rehab.
right. Right. But instead of
Now,
flipping,
Cecily,
you're holding.
Would you estimate that the cost going in on the buy hold is going to be, the renovation cost is less than if you were flipping to sell? Because of the quality or finishes?
I'm not going to do high-end kitchen, but I still give them granite countertop I buy cheaper, like black or white appliances, whatever cheaper I can find. But I normally put in brand new roof, new plumbing, whatever I have to fix, I will do replace everything so it will last longer for the tenant.
Cecily, I have a question here from Megan. Who's doing your work? So you're still fixing the house up for the buy hold. Is it a GC, or are you coordinating all the subcontractors, and who handles the repairs during the hold period?
You asking me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, so I have to go roofer. It used to be Bill Green, but now I have to find somebody else. Now I have a roofer or plumber or electrician that I have relationship with for all my deals with my clients' houses. But for like a floor or kitchen, I use those cheaper Chinese contractor, like John said. They normally has cheaper labor costs, but still they do a decent job to do the kitchen.
Okay. So essentially, you are your own GC then for these projects. You're subbing out all your contractors. You're the one choosing whether it's a framer, plumber, electrician, all those things.
This is a rental. Correct. I normally don't need to pull permits for any of those work.
Okay. And however, check with your local township or municipality. Got to put the broker hat on here. Okay, and then a couple other questions here. Marie has, do you have a good idea of costs before getting estimates, or leave it to the GC? That's a good question. So do you have an idea when Chris Rossmeyer is saying, hey, you're out of your mind for this cost, how do you know what your general costs are going to be?
Well, like Chris said, he's been averaging 60 to 80. So I did a quick calculation listening to him, and my last couple have been about $65 a square foot. So yeah, if I'm buying a 1,200 square foot 3-bedroom house in the neighborhood, I want to calculate the $65 a square foot on a renovation, give or take. If he finds something that could be extra work, he explains it to me, then we could add that cost. But other than that, we try to keep them numbers as a rule of thumb.
Okay. Do you guys, how many of you, when you do the buy, whether it's the buy, hold, or a flip, are you putting it in your own personal name, or are you putting it as an LLC?
LLC for me.
LLC.
Cecily?
LLC. I only have one property under my name and my husband's name, but that was before I have real estate license.
Got it. Okay. Is that your commercial building? No.
A commercial building, of course, is under LLC. You don't want any
LLC, yeah.
your personal names.
All right. And then let me see.
Can I ask two quick questions to Cecily?
Yes.
One, if you could email us who you use for the financing on the refi with the LLC. I just haven't come across any, when we wanted to pull money out, it's not like doing an individual name. My guy doesn't do it, whom I go to, and I just haven't found anybody good.
Yes, I use Newfield National Bank.
Newfield.
They're very good with investors.
Okay. They're local.
One more question on the LLC. On the buy and hold, do you put them all in the same LLC or a different LLC for each buy and hold?
Different ones, but I try to put maybe 2 or 3 under one, and then another one for another 2 or 3.
Okay. And what's the advantage to put them all under one versus individuals, Cecily, would you say?
Well, then it's all comes to the liabilities, right? If your attorney going to sue you, or tenant going to sue you, they're going to sue all the assets that LLC has. Yep.
Okay. But why do you put multiples under one LLC? Why not just do a separate on each one?
Because I'm lazy.
That's why I was asking.
And my accountant going to charge me more every time you have to file a bunch of different LLCs return.
That's true too, because LLC returns are more money than.
It's the right thing to create separate LLC for different rental. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. From the acquisition date to your active on the market list date, I touched on this. What is your expected time from acquiring the property to listing the property? What do you expect when you go in?
6 months. Should get in and out in 6 months, because if you have carrying costs, every month costs you money. So If you can get it done in 3 or 4 months, that's great. But 6 months is, I think, a fair time.
Cecily?
For my rental, the contractor all say, oh, it'll be done in 2 weeks. It normally take about 2 months to 3 months to finish, even for a rental.
Ryan?
Yeah, the goal is no more than 6 months. The fastest I've had it handed over has been 5 months, and I've had some stretch 8, 9 months. So the goal is 6. Again, if they have unforeseen issues, you deal with an L&I issue, you deal with a neighbor who's not. I had a neighbor who wouldn't let us on our property to do siding on the side of my addition. So you have a lot of variables that unforeseen, and sometimes it'll stretch it. But 6 months is my rule of thumb.
Cecily?
Can somebody talk about the zoning issue in Philly and the sheriff sale in Philly? Those are the two areas I'm really want to learn more.
Yeah, we'll hit that at the end of these questions. Those are good questions. Because I want to keep the flow going with the time period on this. So Ryan, you got 6 months. What do you have, Chris Rossmeyer?
The shortest flip I ever did was 1 month, and
What?
the longest.
Is that a wholesale?
No, I bought a property from an auction, and the property, believe it or not, didn't need too much work. So we went in there, we spruced it up and put it right back up on the market. And it was, believe it or not, it was the best profit we ever had. To give you an idea, we paid in Havertown, we bought the place for $113,000. It took us 30 days to rehab, and we sold for $290,000.
Now, when they bought it, what did they? I mean, don't they usually? Did they go FHA or conventional? Because
we paid
you have to watch
cash.
this.
Here's the caveat. We had to buy the property with a hostile tenant. So there was an eviction that didn't go well. And we decided that it was worth the risk buying the property with the person still living in there. And I knocked on the door. I talked to the guy, introduced myself as like the new owner and everything. And I worked out a deal where I let him pay us rent for 6 months until his son graduated high school. And it all worked out good. It could have gone disastrous, but it did work out well. And
Wait, so he stayed for 6 months?
He stayed for 6 months. He paid us rent. After the 6 months, he moved out. We fixed it in 30 days, put it back up. And yeah, that was the biggest profit we've had so far.
Well, the reason I'm bringing up the time period is you have to watch if you were able to actually flip it from the acquisition date to a month later, you may not get most buyer financing because it's too close on the deed recording.
Yeah, it wound up taking about 7.5 months from the time we bought it to the time we had it under contract.
Got it. So it sounds like the common theme here is 6 to 9. I mean, that's what I always went by, 6 to 9 months, try to get it in 6, but put in 9 months. If it's taking a year, you guys got to get that thing done. Don't go past a year if you're flipping it. And that'll help you with your holding costs. And then we have I think a lot of the agents here are going to get some pretty good general rules of thumb. That's the goal here for people that don't do it all the time, is that, if you get ambitious and think you can get it done in like 45 days to 60 days, I mean, you have a lot of experience on this panel, and I'm pretty sure they're not going to be able to get it done in 45 to 60 days on a flip. Would you guys all agree? Like a regular flip, it's just very difficult to do. All right, so how involved? So let's move on to, and I will say, actually, moving back to the 6 to 9 months. So Gia works with a lot of flippers and a lot of developers. And one of the things that we know that they do is they have about, and Mike probably knows this because his guys do it, they have at least 2 or 3 projects going simultaneously. So the demo crew goes from the one to the next to the next. So they're getting like anywhere from 6 to 10 flips out a year. I mean, this is what they do pretty much for their business. And that's enabling them. They still are on that 6 to 9 month period, but they might be doing 2 at a time, 3 at a time. And their crews are moving from each one to each one. And that's a nice business to get into if the market is healthy. If the market corrects, I think Cecily's adding a ton of value to this panel with her buy hold strategies, because I would definitely have a backup of a buy hold if you go in on a flip, because especially with you just have election inauguration day, you don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months. Your numbers may be out of whack. It's always good to have a backup plan for that. And that's also something to be said if you're doing hard money, because you got to pay. Does anybody, since we're on money, does anybody have any questions on, like, Mike, can you kind of give an explanation of the typical hard money program?
So they usually charge you like 2 to 3 points on the front, maybe a point on the back. I haven't used a hard money guy in years, so rates are probably, I know when I was doing them a few years back, they were like 10, 11%. But I really haven't used all my guys have been cash. I mean, I got like 5 or 6 crews, they're all cash.
How about you, Ryan? Have you?
Yeah, we just recently did one because we had 2 going on at the same time, and then had invested in the construction cost on somebody else's project. We just funded the money for them. So we were kind of strapped, and a deal came up. So we used a company called iFund Philly, but now they switched their name to iFund Cities because they're trying to get in the Jersey market as well, not just Philly. And they charged us 2 points up, actually 1.5 points up front, and 9.9% interest. So we held the money for about 5 months, 150 grand they gave us. So all in all, we probably paid them between 9,000 and 10,000 with the points and the interest.
Now, Ryan, are they taking their cost out at the closing when they initiate the money?
Yeah. When we borrowed 150, they took out any cost incurred with doing the refinance. We bought the house cash. We had a house cash that we had them pull that money on so we could use that money to buy something else. So yeah, they took it out. So I forget what we walked with, but yeah, that 1.5 points.
And they take your mortgage payments out, right?
Automatic deduction. It was around $1,300 a month or something, and we paid it for about 5 months till we paid them off. And
you pay $1,300 every month for 5 months?
Yeah, it wasn't added to the principal. We paid the $1,300. It was interest only. It's an interest only loan for a year.
Yeah.
But we ended up paying interest only for 5 months, and then had to pay back the balance at the end of the 5 months.
Got it.
But
so I wanted to give
it was smooth dealing with them, and we had our money in our account. I'd say probably 3 weeks, if not less, 2.5, 3 weeks.
Okay.
So it was worth it.
Anybody else have any hard money experiences they want to share? Because I know it's a topic for some of the agents that are participating. So moving on to design concept. How involved do you guys get in the design? Who handles the design? If you're doing a GC, is it the GC that does the design? And when I mean design, it's everywhere from what you're renovating, how you're renovating it, removing walls, whether they're load bearing or not, stripping things down, and everything down to the finishes and redesign of kitchens and all that. Anybody? Ryan?
Yeah. It's just going off this new guy that we have, that he's on the 3rd one for us. He's done it all. We used to be involved and tell him what we wanted. We would tell him what style kitchen, but he does a lot of work in the Philly market. He's mainly in Fishtown, Port Richmond, East Kensington, but he's also done a handful in South Philly. So he just knows what is selling, what people are looking for, the open concept, style kitchens, color of the courts. Like he's involved. So he's not just, going off and buying the cheapest stuff and making it ugly. He does pretty well for us. So yeah, I walk into it and don't even know what the tile's going to look like till I walk in that day. Yeah, we trust him front to back. And as I said, he's just doing standard what's on the market, what's selling, because he does so many a year.
Yeah.
Well, when I'm working with someone, I try to get them I go out and show them like 4 or 5 new construction in the area, so they can get an idea of some of the, what's selling, what's the hot thing, what's the, what kind of cabinets are people using, what kind of floors are people putting in. So I think that's important. I have one group that's just terrible. They're putting like chandeliers in. I'm like, get rid of them. They look like they're 20 years old and they're brand new. And I know they cost a lot of money. I'm like, so sometimes you just gotta let them know, like, this is not gonna work. This is why your place isn't selling. So.
Yeah, and obviously we're seeing some, I think we're seeing more and more flippers getting into this with a design concept behind it. Higher end appliances, higher end cabinetry. It's not just, I'm seeing it in a lot of projects I'm going into these days. People are coming up and by all means, everyone that's going to do this, please stop with the gray. Let's all get away from the gray. Everyone, please try to direct people away from the gray. But I'm just curious because I see a demand for consumers to pay for higher end stuff in this, especially what's her name has done it. Rachel has done that down in the city. She's gotten a lot of higher end stuff from her design concepts. All right, let's see. Can you guys give me a step-by-step summary of how you identify the property and then you move on all the way up to the time you're ready to list? Who's willing to go wing this? Oh, Chris, I'll go with Chris. You have to unmute.
Sorry, there's a lot of stuff going on in the office. So step-by-step process from start to finish, you said?
Yes.
Okay. My first thing is I try to identify areas that are good selling areas. That's the first step. And then constantly comb those areas for deals. I look at a variety of ways to find properties. I do go to auctions. I go to the MLS. I've purchased properties at auctions through the MLS any way that I can, but main thing is find a good area. I try to stay out of the really bad neighborhoods in Philly. And I try to stick to the areas that sell better. That's my rule of thumb. And once I find the area, then I comb the area as long as it takes. Sometimes I put 10, 15, even 20 offers in before I get a deal accepted. So you can't get frustrated when you get deals turned down. You just have to keep plugging away at it. After I find the property, I don't worry about getting quotes from the contractors. I already have enough experience to know what the cost of the rehab is going to be roughly. So I know what the ARV is. I know what the costs are going to generally be. And if I have to find a contractor that fits my mold, then I'll just keep interviewing contractors until I find somebody that's going to fit the numbers that I need to make the job work. I hire the contractor, sign the contract. Then let's fast forward the contract. The contractor gets everything done. Then we start marketing the property, sell it, and go on to the next one.
Nice. Sounds easy. Anybody else want to share how if there's any more steps or anything else they do in the process? Pretty much it. All right, so I'm going to open this up to questions for anybody. Anybody that wants to ask a question now. Well, actually, I have one chat question. Megan had a good question. Do any of your contractors offer warranties for the work that they do? Chris.
The GCs that I work with, I make sure that they offer at least a 12-month warranty on craftsmanship. I've had a couple of rehabs where people moved in and like 5 or 6 months later, the plumbing goes bad, or two instances actually just within like the last 12 months. I had one flip around the corner from me, and the guy's my neighbor, to make things worse. And he said that the pipe burst in the ceiling, like one of the couplings came apart and water started pouring through his ceiling, and it did like $20,000 worth of damages. So thankfully it was covered by the guy's homeowner's insurance, but I had the contractor, pay like $4,000 towards his deductibles and other costs that he had to incur in order to get all the work done. So I do have my contractors sign a warranty for 12 months.
Should I be taking notes on this most recent issue for further review? What about throwing a home warranty on, like a AHS or something?
Well, for me, most of the times I put all brand new stuff in. There's no reason to pay for a home warranty when you have all new appliances and heaters and hot water tanks and everything. That should
Well,
all be
plumbing.
covered under the manufacturer's warranty.
Cecily's saying she made her contractor sign a 1-year labor warranty. I think to expand on this topic, unless it's Toll Brothers, who have a lot of proof of standing behind their work, you kind of have to look at the source and see if a contractor is not really in business for a long period of time, they can always file bankruptcy on an LLC and move into another one. So that's my concern with contractor warranties. Every time I flip the property, I throw a home warranty on top of it, in addition to the contractor ones. And I had one case where a cabinet cracked from a farm sink, and our contractors are pretty reputable. They follow GIA. They went back and replaced the cabinet. Like, so, but I still had the home warranty on top of it, just in case plumbing issues happen. And we coach the consumer on the buy end to say, look, anytime you see a leak, call this home warranty company first. So that's kind of our way around it, because I just don't trust contractors. Ryan?
Yeah, I agree. Now, listening to everybody, my last two, I did offer home warranties, and more so for plumbing, electrical issues like that. Obviously, the manufacturer warranty is covered for a year for appliances. But a few years back, I sold a renovation. I had the buyer. It wasn't my renovation, somebody else's. And within the first 2 months, it was the first time using the dishwasher, water everywhere. Called the agent, asked the agent to call his contractor, send his guy out, stick by your work. And his answer was, welcome to home ownership, and didn't send anybody out for my client. So, obviously it was an awakening for me. So I try now to make sure, yes, there's at least a 1-year warranty involved to try to protect them from something like that.
I think Dan had a question on, well, actually, this was from Serena. Do you draft your own contractor warranty paperwork? I'm going to go on first as a broker and say, do not do this. Please don't draft your own contractor warranty paperwork. What do you guys think about that? Here's why. A, you're not a lawyer. B, if you're going to put a warranty in writing and give it to your contractor, and I can tell you this because I deal with all the legal issues, the first person that's going to turn on you is your seller, buyer, or contractor, or anyone. If you did anything that came from you, as far as like writing a warranty or doing anything, at the minute of lawsuits happening, everyone throws their hands up and says, I was just told to do this by my agent. And they're taught to do that by their lawyer. So don't download a template either. Make the contractor. He's got the LLC. I would make the contractor provide it, or throw a home warranty, because at least if you throw the home warranty on, and if you use like America's Preferred, which allows you to choose your own contractor for fixing it, at least if you do that, you can say, look, my contractor gave their labor, their warranty, or my contractor didn't. I wanted to make sure the person was protected as much as I can. It's not my scope. I just threw a home warranty on. I mean, guys, it's only $550. Like, really, what at that point, if you're, you probably shouldn't be doing flips if you're worried about $550 at that juncture. Anybody else with any comments on that, on warrantying the work? I know Cecily said she made her contractor sign a 1-year labor warranty. Should I ask Cecily if you wrote that, or if the contractor provided it?
No, they wrote it. They put it on their receipt. When I pay them, I make sure they sign it, pay off, and include labor and material warranty. They will.
That's a good way to do it. That's a good way to do it, where they're putting it on their receipt. You could, if you're filing LLCs and you have any legal work in any of this, you may want to talk to an attorney to prepare something for you. That would be okay. If it came, like, if you're doing all these on your own, have an attorney prepare something for you. Let's see, contract paperwork. Anybody have? Oh, okay. So Dan wants to know a little bit more. Well, this is the $1 million question. Finding target homes, and I guess we can tie in a little bit about wholesaling and people's thoughts on wholesaling. Philadelphia just, I think, did they approve that requirement that you have to be licensed in order to do any type of wholesaling? Yeah, Ryan, you're muted, but
Yeah, I think it actually takes effect very soon, within the month, I think. But I heard it was approved that you need a license now to do it. And my personal experience, I haven't gotten a single deal from a wholesaler yet. I feel like they have their A players that they take all their pretty good deals to, and I'm on their email list of ones that I just feel like the numbers aren't there to make sense. So yeah, I personally haven't done a deal with a wholesaler.
Anybody else on where you find your properties? I had a couple guys who did new construction in the city. They bought lots off of an investor, and they were novices at the investment part. They were very good contractors. They basically didn't make a dime. They took a bath. And I said to them, I came in on the second end. It was another agent that sold them the lots. I came in to sell them, and I said, you know, why on earth would you think an investor is selling you lots where there's a large profit margin? Like, an investor is just not going to do that. The investor, you know, sometimes an investor will sell a lot. And again, it goes back to my calculation of 15 to 25% ROI on my cash. And if an investor is going to make only 15% on his cash, and he can sell the lot right away from the initial acquisition and make like 5 to 10%, then it's not worth the risk for him to make another 10%. So he'll just sell it. But those margins start to get so small. It's something you have to be careful of, I think. But how else are you guys identifying? I mean, I guess what everybody wants is, how are you identifying decent deals?
You make all your money on the purchase, like from, you know, start to finish. If you buy too high, you'll never make any money. I mean, I've gone to settlement tables where people bought too high, and the seller's bringing a check to the settlement table. So that's the most important move.
And I think Rachel Street proved this a lot, is if you do buy too high, then you can improve it to a level where you make a good profit, but it's a risk. You have to be careful of that. That's where I was going with high-end rehabs.
Yeah, but then you got to worry about it not appraising, you know? I mean,
you know, and I said it's a risk, yeah. But she's done it. I mean, we saw her do it in Passyunk Square.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, she's had very good success on it. But yeah, those are all good points. You know, I agree. Mike's right. You buy it on the end. I went in on partners with one where Mike found us the property, and my partner was a knucklehead, and he wouldn't agree on this. The seller was very fixated on one price. At closing, he was not netting the actual price he thought he was getting. My partner said, I'm not paying his costs so he can net that. The deal fell through. And Mike sends me, like, what, 9 months later or a year later, we would have made, it was like 285 purchase, and we would have made, I think, like 150,000 on it.
At least
I could kill that guy.
They sold it for $715.
Oh
yeah.
I was at the closing table, and I couldn't get this knucklehead, who was my money guy, to agree. And that's the thing, is Mike's right. Like, that was a great deal on the end. Mike's pretty conservative. When I ask Mike and Ryan their opinions, they're usually pretty conservative. They're not over ambitious on things. Somebody, I know there was a big question on, can we talk a little bit about zoning permits in Philly and how the sheriff sales work in Philly? Chris, maybe you have a lot of experience with this.
So I'll start with the zoning. Anytime you look to do anything, you better make sure before you buy the property that you're going to be able to get the zoning changed if you plan on changing the zoning. My recommendation would be to call the local licensing and inspection and ask to talk to an inspector and just get an opinion before you do anything. The biggest problems that I've had with delays are because of zoning issues. So definitely know ahead of time whether you're going to be able to get the zoning changed if you need to get it changed. Otherwise, you could also be buying a property that you really don't want in the long run. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's a magic pill for zoning. You just have to do your due diligence before you buy the lot or the piece of ground. I mean, I bought a property and then subdivided it, and we had to change a little bit of the zoning to do that, and it took like 6 months to get it done. It doesn't happen quickly. What was the second part? Oh, the sheriff sales. I haven't been to a sheriff sale in about 9 months, and I went for 4 months in a row, and the sheriff sales have become so competitive. There's investment groups out there, especially a lot of Asian investment groups where the people pool their money together, and they literally buy millions of dollars worth of properties all in a clip. Like there's 4 or 5 people that buy 80% of the sheriff sale properties at the auctions. And it's hard to compete because I sit down and I do hours and hours of research. I identify like 40 properties that I'd be interested in buying. And then when I get to the sheriff's auction, I always get outbid, not by like 1,000 or 2,000. I'm talking like 20,000. Their rate of return must be very low. Either that, or they think that they're going to be able to turn these properties over at a much higher margin than I think. Maybe I'm too conservative, but when I'm there with my partner's money and other investors' money, I'm not going to buy a property and then risk losing their investment. I mean, that's just me. So the last 4 times I went, I came out empty-handed. So I don't have a good answer for sheriff sales. I've bought many properties from the sheriff auction before. Just within the last like 2 years, I haven't been able to get anything.
Now, Chris is right. There's a big outfit. In fact, in my development, they bought a flip, and they right probably 9 doors away from me. I can't remember the name of the company. I mean, they're huge. They buy hundreds of properties, and they are satisfied with a 10% return on their money in, which is like unheard of. But they're doing 100 of these, and they have an entire infrastructure built to do this. Like they have their contractors, they have their painters, they have their, designers, their stagers, and so. I think the underlying theme is, guys, you're against some pretty big fish when you go into this. This is not just everyday people. If you have a consumer that wants to get into this, tell them all the horror stories. I know Barb put a question up. Does anybody have a disastrous flip? And I know Chris Rossmeyer has one, so I'll let him answer that. Ryan may have one. It's a fun one. So we'll move to that in a second. But keep in mind, you have, and I know that. Chris said the Asian community, Turkish community also did this. These guys were coming in from Turkey with millions, all the way from New York, all the way down to Virginia, buying properties at sheriff sales, selling them back to each other. So you're going against some pretty big competition. So Chris, why don't you tell us about one of these disastrous flips that you had over the years? And then anybody else can join in.
Do you guys have a few hours? All right, so one of them that I have, and I have to actually leave after I tell this story because I have an appointment at 1 o'clock. But I had a property in University City that I purchased, and I got it at a good price. I paid $155,000 for it, and the ARV was somewhere around like 320, and I hired bad contractors. And it's not so much that they were bad in that they didn't show up and they didn't do the work. It was the quality of the work that they did was poor. And after the job was done, I wound up only being able to sell the property for $280. And I wound up taking about a $10,000 loss on that project. And right across the street from me, just to give you some perspective, there was another house flip directly across the street that did a better quality flip. They got $350 for theirs. So we had a gigantic loss because we hired the wrong contractors. So, just finding somebody that's available, if you don't see their work ahead of time, I mean, I was going off of pictures and things like that. I didn't actually physically walk any properties when I looked at their jobs. And one of the subcontractors that was in there, actually, one of the GCs that was in there, him and his partner split about 1/3 of the way through the project. And I had to choose which partner I wanted to stick with. And it was a total nightmare. I wound up choosing the wrong partner. And it wound up costing me about $70,000 net.
Didn't they also steal the copper out of the house?
Not that one. No, that was the property in Germantown. I had copper
Better
stolen.
horror story.
Yeah, that one I lost about 100,000 on that one. They stole the air conditioner compressor. They took the hot water, my $1,000 hot water tank out of the property. Yeah,
I was
anything.
in that one.
Yeah, you were in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So was about 20 other vagabonds that robbed the place.
I was one of them.
Insurance claim?
What's that,
What was
Cecily?
that, Cecily?
Don't you get an insurance claim to get the money back for the thing that stole, from you?
Well, when you have a vacant house, you have vacant home insurance. The deductible is like $3,000. So it's not worth to pay the deductible. I just wound up buying everything all over again. So
And by the time you put the claim in, I imagine it's like,
yeah, it was a big headache. And then at the time, this was years ago, the market shifted halfway through the project, and I estimated that the property was going to sell for like 250, and it didn't sell anywhere close to that. It wound up selling for 190. So it was that was a bath. Yeah, that was a really bad one.
Well, Chris, thanks a lot for all your.
What's that,
Oh,
John?
Oh no, I was thanking you for all the input you provided. I knew you were going to run.
Yeah, but then again, I've had positive ones where we've made 160,000 in a flip. So, and my most recent ones that we're doing the new construction, if everything works out, I mean, we should be making around 300 grand, and we can split that 4 ways. So,
Hey,
Question.
Cecily.
Mike, you want to be one of the partners now? You're a fifth.
now that you're almost done.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I do have to run, but thank you, everyone.
Cecily, is this for Chris?
Yeah, so just a
Real quick, Chris.
when you make a good profit from your flip, saying you make 160, assuming you're paying 30% back to the government, do you still think it's a good model to continue to do flips?
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
Yeah.
Because it's residual income for me. It's not money that I'm looking to live off of. To me, it's extra money. So, if I can pick up an extra 25,000 to 40,000 a year, it's gravy to me. I think it's worth it.
Okay.
I think you have to look at your business plan, Cecily. If you're somebody that is going to add this as a revenue stream in your business, it's no different to pay that than paying whatever you're paying on your sales commissions. It's just that your determination has to be, am I wasting too much time doing this that I could be making X amount of dollars in my sales business, and vice versa. But I calculate the taxes in my net. So when I say I want 15% return, that 15% return already has a tax ramification in. It may not be exact down to the penny, but it's 90% of what I'm going to pay. So I encourage, remember everyone, run this as a business. And for those of you that, don't run any of your businesses strictly like a business with full P&L statements and projections, business plans, dive into Full Leverage Agent, because it'll help you in every one of these businesses. Start it from A to Z. If he's registered for it, it's a great product. Anybody else have a horror story?
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
See you, Chris. Thanks again. Expanding on Chris, I did my first flip in Northeast Philly right when probably around 06, and we saw the market starting to collapse, and I couldn't get my contractors done. It was my first one. And I'm a conservative person by nature. So I dropped my price below every comp by the time we finally got on the market, and basically pulled the Band-Aid off. Our projection, it was like 150 to 170,000 was in, and we were projected to sell it at 250 or something. I can't remember the exact numbers. I pulled the Band-Aid off, and instead of us making 25K, I was okay making 10, and I walked away. And don't you know, 6 months later, everybody else was like negative. So you have to have, backup plans, everyone. I like the buy hold aspect that Cecily brought to this, because I think that is a huge backup plan if you don't want to start with the buy hold. Cecily's going to be in a great position if she's got like 5 or 10 in her portfolio, and then there's another market that goes up, boom, she can start selling these off, and she's going to be laughing at the 30% or doing 1031 exchanges.
To pay 30% tax. No.
1031 exchanges, and do them. Does anybody have any questions that we didn't touch on? Brian, unmute.
I'll add on the horror story thing, something quick. Just make sure that if you are buying with an occupant in there, I bought 3 or 4 with occupants in there and had 3 success stories, and one took 14 months, 15 months to get them out through court, he was trying to, he was the son of the parents who died. He was trying to get a life estate, saying that it was never in the will, but he said his parents wanted him to stay there till he died. He had a pro bono lawyer in downtown who was a big lawyer. Took 15 months to get him out, and I had to hand him 15,000 cash to walk out the door. And he stuck me with a $2,500 water bill, and I had to pay the taxes for 2 years. But the good part is my ARV buying it was about 230, 240, and with the market, we sold it for 277. So all the cost that he cost me, we end up making on the back end. So it wasn't a horror story, but dealing with the guy for 15 months and going to court 3 different times was not good.
So I know Ryan, everyone, and I can promise you that cost him an additional $50,000 a year from him stressing over that and not focusing on positive things.
Yeah. Yep.
Anybody, MJ, anybody have a horror story to add? Cecily? No?
Well, you know, I have clients who do flips, maybe 6 to 12 deals a year. So I am with them starting from purchase to after they finish flipping and sell it. So it's somewhere between the contractor put a 3rd layer of roof, so they have to tear it down. That happened twice. Things like that, you know, it's part of flipping. I mean,
Billy Green?
No, not him, somebody else.
I was just, yeah, it's just the regular parts of flipping, right? Yeah. All right. Well, if anybody, does anybody want to add anything or ask any additional questions? If not, then we'll wrap this up. Well, I want to thank Cecily. I want to thank Ryan, Mike, and Chris Rossmeyer. This was a great panel. I thought there was a lot of great information. Do you guys feel like you got some information to help you with what you're going to be doing with flips? You can find them on our, so I don't know if everybody knows this, but if you go to oneresources.org, it has an easy tile access for you to find a lot of things out about the company. In there, you'll be able to find the Google Drive that has like our office roster. So you have full agent contact information there if you ever want to connect with any of these agents. We also have our YouTube video link on that site. And we have our training links and staff review, all those things of who does what. So oneresources.org, the website for that's getting revamped. And you can find them on Facebook as well, our private group page. Thanks, everybody. I love these masterminds. Thanks again.
Everybody. Thanks a lot.
Have a great week, everyone. Bye.
Oh, do you need to go home?